Whispers in the void, the bridge of the UES Crimson Dawn hummed with quiet efficiency, its vast viewports revealing the infinite tapestry of stars. Captain Nora Blackwood stood at the center of it all, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she studied the holographic display floating before her. At 38, she had already earned a reputation as one of humanity's finest commanders, her auburn hair pulled back in regulation style, though a few rebellious strands framed her angular face. "Captain, we're receiving priority transmission from Fleet Command," announced Lieutenant Jace Torrens from his navigation station. His voice carried that familiar warmth that made Nora's pulse quicken, though she'd never admit it. Jace was younger than her by 5 years, his dark eyes holding an intelligence that complemented his steady demeanor. "On screen," Nora commanded, though her gaze lingered a moment too long on Jace's profile. Admiral Kes Montano materialized in the hologram, her silver hair stark against her uniform. "Captain Blackwood, we've received disturbing intelligence. Multiple alien species are forming an unprecedented coalition. Our sources suggest they're targeting human expansion territories." Nora felt her chest tighten. "How many species, Admiral?" "At least 12 confirmed, possibly more. The Skarn Empire is leading the coordination." Montano's expression grew grave. "They're calling it the Great Cleansing. They believe humanity has grown too powerful too quickly." Before Nora could respond, a soft chime announced another presence on the bridge. Zephyr, the Cathari liaison, approached with their characteristic fluid grace. The Cathari were one of the few alien species that had chosen cooperation over conflict with humans. Zephyr's translucent skin shifted through subtle hues of blue and silver, their large eyes reflecting deep concern. "Captain," Zephyr spoke in their melodic voice, "I have heard whispers from my homeworld. The coalition grows larger than your intelligence suggests. They fear what humanity might become." Jace turned from his station, worry creasing his brow. "Captain, if they're forming an alliance of this magnitude, we'll face it," Nora said firmly, though privately she wondered if even the Crimson Dawn could stand against such overwhelming numbers. The warship was humanity's greatest achievement, its advanced weapon systems and defensive capabilities unmatched in known space. "But against an entire coalition?" Admiral Montano continued. "The Crimson Dawn is our best hope. Your ship represents humanity's strength. If you can demonstrate our defensive capabilities, it might deter further aggression. Or provoke it," Zephyr added quietly. As the transmission ended, the bridge fell into contemplative silence. Nora dismissed most of the crew, leaving only essential personnel. Jace approached her station, his presence both comforting and unsettling. "Nora," he said softly, using her first name as he did only when they were alone. "Are we really ready for this?" She turned to face him, noticing how the starlight caught the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. They had been dancing around their feelings for months, both bound by regulations and the weight of command. But with potential death looming, such concerns seemed trivial. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I know I can't imagine facing it without you." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Jace stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his familiar cologne, could see the way his pulse beat at his throat. "When this is over," he said, his hand almost touching hers on the console, "we need to talk." "Really talk?" Nora nodded, her heart racing. "When this is over." Across the bridge, Zephyr observed the exchange with knowing eyes. In their species, love was considered the greatest strength against despair. They hoped these humans understood that truth before it was too late. The Crimson Dawn continued its course through the void, carrying its crew toward a destiny none of them could fully comprehend. In the ship's depths, experimental weapon systems hummed with contained power, waiting to reveal humanity's true strength to a galaxy that had perhaps underestimated the species they sought to contain. Behind them, space seemed to whisper of gathering storms and the collision of civilizations that would reshape the known universe. The gathering storm. In the command chamber of the massive Skarn dreadnought World Render, General Vorth Kralik studied the tactical displays with growing unease. His scaled hide bore the scars of countless battles, and his reptilian eyes held the cold calculation of a seasoned warrior. Yet something about this campaign felt different, wrong somehow. "General, the final fleet elements are arriving," reported his aide, a younger Skarn whose enthusiasm hadn't yet been tempered by experience. 12 species, over 8,000 ships. The humans cannot possibly stand against us. Kralix's claws tapped against the metal console. Never underestimate an enemy, especially one that has survived as long as humanity. His voice carried the weight of centuries of military experience. They didn't conquer half the galaxy through weakness. Across the vast coalition fleet, ships from a dozen different worlds formed an impressive armada. Crystalline vessels from the Zephyrian Empire caught starlight like prisms, while the bioorganic ships of the Morphic Collective pulsed with living energy. The sight should have filled Kralix with confidence, yet doubt gnawed at him. Meanwhile, aboard a sleek stealth cruiser at the fleet's edge, Admiral Tess Valen reviewed her secret communications. Once humanity's most decorated tactical officer, she had been Nora's mentor at the Academy. Now, bitter over being passed over for promotion, she had made a choice that would haunt her forever. "The humans are approaching with a single ship," she transmitted to Kralix. "The UES Crimson Dawn. I know its capabilities, its weaknesses." Kralix's image flickered in her private chamber. "You're certain your former student will fall for your intelligence?" "Nora always trusted me," Tess said, though her voice carried less certainty than her words. "She won't expect betrayal from someone she considers family." Back on the Crimson Dawn, young weapons officer Finn Reeves frantically analyzed incoming sensor data. At 24, he was brilliant but inexperienced, his nervous energy barely contained as he worked. "Captain," he called out, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm reading massive energy signatures converging on our position. The scanner array is having trouble processing the sheer volume of ships." Nora felt her blood chill. "How many, Lieutenant?" "At least 8,000, ma'am. Possibly more. It's unlike anything in our databases." Jace moved closer to Nora's command chair, his presence steadying her even as the magnitude of their situation became clear. "Orders, Captain?" Before she could respond, a priority communication arrived. Admiral Valen's familiar face appeared on screen, and Nora felt a moment of relief. Tess had been like an older sister to her, a mentor who had guided her through her early career. "Nora, thank God I reached you," Tess said, her expression grave. "I've been monitoring Coalition communications. They're planning a massive ambush at the Kepler Junction. You need to alter course immediately." "Tess, what are you doing out here?" Nora asked, surprised to see her former mentor so far from human space. "Deep reconnaissance mission," Tess replied smoothly. "I can transmit tactical data to help you avoid their trap. Trust me, Nora, when have I ever steered you wrong?" As the transmission ended, Zephyr approached quietly. "Captain, my people's sensors detect deception patterns in that communication." The Cathari have learned to read such things through necessity. Nora's heart sank. If Tess was compromised, or worse, actively working against them, their situation had become even more dire. She glanced at Jace, seeing her own fears reflected in his eyes. Meanwhile, in a distant part of the Coalition fleet, Commander Nexia observed the gathering forces from her command ship. Unlike the other species, she wasn't entirely committed to humanity's destruction. Her people, the Voidwalkers, had their own agenda. Balance in the galaxy. Humans were dangerous, yes. But so was the precedent of multiple species uniting to crush a single civilization. "Prepare our ships for battle," she commanded her crew, "but keep our weapons on minimal power. We may need to make a difficult choice before this ends." The chess pieces were moving into position. Across space, fleets maneuvered toward what would become the most significant battle in galactic history. Ancient grudges, personal betrayals, and species survival instincts all converged on a single point, where humanity's greatest warship waited. General Kralix stood before the massive viewport of his flagship, watching the stars wheel slowly past. In his long military career, he had never felt such certainty of victory coupled with such unease about its necessity. The humans had shown they could be reasonable, even cooperative with species like the Cathari. But orders were orders, and the Coalition had decided. Humanity's expansion must be stopped by diplomacy, if possible, by force if necessary. As he watched the Crimson Dawn's distant running lights, he found himself hoping the humans would see reason and withdraw. Somehow he doubted they would. The void between the fleets grew smaller with each passing hour, carrying them all toward a confrontation that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Love and steel, the hours before battle stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Throughout the Crimson Dawn, crew members prepared for what might be their final mission. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Iris Kane methodically checked her equipment, her movements precise despite the tremor in her hands. She had served alongside Nora for 3 years, harboring feelings she'd never dared voice until now, when silence might mean never having the chance. "Captain on deck," someone announced as Nora entered the medical bay for her pre-battle physical. "Just routine checks, Doctor," Nora said, settling onto the examination table. The two women had shared countless quiet moments during long deployments, their friendship deepening into something neither had acknowledged. Iris activated her medical scanner, trying to keep her voice steady. "Nora, if we don't make it through this—" "We will," Nora interrupted firmly. "But if we don't," Iris continued, stepping closer, "I need you to know that serving with you has been the honor of my life. More than an honor, if I'm being honest." Their eyes met, and for a moment the weight of unspoken feelings filled the small space between them. Nora reached out, touching Iris's hand gently. "I know," she said softly. "In another life, another time. But right now, my heart belongs elsewhere." Iris nodded, understanding and sadness mixing in her expression. "Jace is a good man. He'll keep you grounded when the fire starts." Meanwhile, across the ship, Captain Dex Morrison of the escort vessel UES Shadowhawk was coordinating with Nora's tactical team. His ship was smaller, faster, designed for hit-and-run tactics rather than prolonged engagement. "Captain Blackwood," he said over the comm, "my ship can draw some of their fire. Create openings for your main batteries. Negative, Dex. I won't sacrifice your crew for tactical advantage," Nora replied firmly. "With respect, Captain, that's exactly what we signed up for. Humanity doesn't get to keep existing because we played it safe." As the fleets drew closer, tensions erupted even within the alien coalition. Quinn, a young Cathari warrior, stood before their ship's council, torn between species loyalty and personal conviction. "The humans have shown us respect," Quinn argued, their skin shifting to agitated purples and reds. "They trade fairly, honor agreements. Why do we join those who would destroy them?" Elder Mistral, ancient even by Cathari standards, pulsed with disappointed blues. "Because, young one, neutrality is a luxury we cannot afford. If we do not choose a side, both will see us as enemies. Then perhaps it's time to choose the right side, not merely the winning one," Quinn retorted before storming from the chamber. Back on the Crimson Dawn, as the final hours approached, Nora found herself in her private quarters, staring at tactical projections. The knock on her door came as no surprise. She had been hoping for it. Jace entered without ceremony, his usual professional demeanor replaced by raw vulnerability. "Permission to speak freely, Captain?" "Always," she replied, standing to face him. "I've run the tactical scenarios a dozen times." "Our chances aren't good," he said, moving closer. "I can't face those odds with regrets between us." The space between them seemed to evaporate. Nora reached up, tracing the line of his jaw with her fingertips. "Jace, He silenced her with a kiss, tender at first, then desperate as the weight of their situation crashed over them. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I love you, Nora," he whispered against her forehead. "I have for months. Whatever happens out there, I needed you to know." "I love you too," she replied, her voice breaking slightly. "God help me, I love you too." They held each other in the dim light of her quarters, two souls finding solace before the storm. Outside, the coalition fleet grew larger on the sensors, a wall of steel and fury bearing down on humanity's greatest hope. In the coalition fleet, Commander Reyes Thyron of the Hegemony prepared his warriors for battle, his enthusiasm untempered by doubt. Unlike General Kralix, he saw humanity as nothing more than an upstart species that needed to be reminded of their place. "Today we teach the humans humility," he broadcast to his fleet. "They have forgotten they are newcomers to this galaxy. We will remind them." Yet even as he spoke, reports filtered in from scout ships about the Crimson Dawn's energy readings. The human ship was larger than intelligence had suggested, its power signatures unlike anything in their databases. As the final preparations concluded, both fleets approached the killing ground. Love had been declared, loyalties tested, and choices made. The dance of war was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. In her ready room, Nora sealed a message for Earth. Not a report, but a personal recording for her sister back home. Jace found her there, and together they watched the stars, knowing that in a few short hours, those same stars might be the last thing they ever saw. The void waited, patient as always, ready to witness either humanity's greatest triumph or its most spectacular defeat. The fire unleashes. The battle began not with thunder, but with whispers. Sensor arrays across both fleets registered the moment when weapon systems powered up, when shields reached maximum strength, when thousands of hearts beat faster in the final seconds before hell was unleashed. "All stations, battle stations," Nora commanded, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "Weapons free." Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez had spent 3 years working in the deepest levels of the Crimson Dawn, maintaining systems that officially didn't exist. A woman in her 50s with graying hair and calloused hands, she had helped design the ship's most classified capabilities. Now, as alarms sounded throughout the vessel, she descended to Engineering Level 7, a deck that appeared on no official blueprints. "Authorization Martinez 77 Alpha," she spoke to the sealed vault before her. "Emergency combat protocols, full release." The vault opened with a hiss, revealing controls that pulsed with ominous red light. Rosa's hands trembled as she initiated sequences that would transform their ship from warship to something far more terrifying. Above, the first wave of coalition fighters swept toward the Crimson Dawn like a swarm of angry insects. Lieutenant Sage Cooper, managing communications from her station, coordinated point defense systems with mechanical precision even as her voice shook with fear. "Incoming fighters bearing 27 Mark IV. Point defense online, targeting solutions acquired," she reported, her training overriding her terror. The Crimson Dawn's defensive batteries opened fire, streams of plasma cutting through the void like deadly ribbons. Fighter after fighter vanished in brief explosions, but more kept coming. Thousands more. General Kralix watched from his flagship's bridge as the battle unfolded. What he saw defied his expectations. The human ship's defensive fire was too accurate, too coordinated. Each shot found its mark with surgical precision. "Sir, we're losing fighters faster than anticipated," his tactical officer reported. "Their targeting systems are beyond our models." "Intensify the assault," Kralix ordered, though unease grew in his chest. "All ships, full attack formation." The coalition fleet opened fire in earnest. Beams of energy, plasma torpedoes, and exotic weapons streaked across space toward the lone human vessel. The barrage was magnificent and terrible, enough firepower to crack a moon. It struck the Crimson Dawn's shields in a display that turned space itself into a canvas of destruction. Energy cascaded around the ship's protective barrier like water around a stone. For a moment, the human vessel disappeared in the fury of the attack. When the light faded, the Crimson Dawn remained, its shields held, flickering but intact. Captain Vale Grimm of the Hegemony observed the impossible sight with growing horror. A veteran of dozens of campaigns, he had never seen a single ship withstand such concentrated fire. "Impossible," he whispered. "No shield technology could—" His words died as the human ship began to change. Hull sections that had appeared to be armor plating slid away, revealing weapon ports that glowed with contained energy. The Crimson Dawn had been hiding its true nature. In the engineering vault, Rosa completed her activation sequence. "Crimson Dawn Actual, this is engineering. Phoenix protocol is online. All primary systems are green." On the bridge, Nora felt the ship transform around her. New displays appeared, weapon systems came online that she had only heard whispers about. The Crimson Dawn had been built as humanity's ultimate deterrent, and now that deterrent was about to speak. "Target the lead formation," she ordered. "Full spread, minimum power." Even at minimum power, what the Crimson Dawn unleashed defied comprehension. Beams of pure energy, coherent and focused beyond anything the galaxy had seen, reached out across the void. Where they touched coalition ships, matter simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, simply erased from reality. 300 ships vanished in the first salvo. Across the coalition fleet, panic spread like wildfire. Commanders who had been confident of victory now screamed orders to retreat, to scatter, to do anything but remain in the path of those impossible weapons. "What have we awakened?" Captain Grimm whispered, watching entire formations disappear. His own ship shuddered as a near miss boiled space around them. On the Cathari vessel, Quinn watched in stunned silence as their worst fears came true. The humans hadn't been hiding weakness. They had been hiding strength beyond imagination. "Contact the Coalition Command," Quinn ordered. "Tell them we're withdrawing. This isn't warfare, this is suicide." But even as some ships tried to flee, Others pressed the attack. Commander Ray's Thyron, his bloodlust undiminished by the carnage, drove his forces forward in a desperate charge. "All ships ramming speed," he broadcast. "If we cannot outfight them, we will overwhelm them with our sacrifice." The Crimson Dawn's response was swift and merciless. A new type of weapon activated, creating fields of distorted space that tore approaching ships apart at the molecular level. Thyron's flagship imploded in a cascade of twisted metal and screaming energy. In the depths of space, an ancient being stirred. Xerion, representative of a species that had watched galaxies rise and fall, observed the battle with something approaching alarm. The humans had developed weapons that threatened the fundamental balance of existence. "Perhaps," Xerion communicated to their distant council, "it is time to intervene." The battle raged on, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. The coalition, despite overwhelming numbers, was being systematically destroyed by a single human vessel. What had begun as a show of force had become a demonstration of humanity's true power, power that would reshape every calculation of galactic politics. In her command chair, Nora watched the slaughter with mixed feelings. They were winning, but at what cost to their souls? Beside her, Jace monitored the tactical display, his face pale as he witnessed the systematic destruction of thousands of ships. The Crimson Dawn continued its deadly work, each shot precise and devastating. The Coalition's great armada, assembled to humble humanity, was being humbled in return by forces they could barely comprehend. The galaxy would remember this day, when humanity showed its true face to the stars. Dawn of a new age silence fell over the battlefield like a shroud. Where once thousands of ships had filled the void with light and fury, now only debris drifted in the cold between stars. The Crimson Dawn hung motionless among the wreckage, its weapons powered down but still glowing faintly, like embers from a dying fire. On Earth, in the halls of the Global Government Complex, President Elena Cross stood before the Emergency Council session, her face grave as she received reports from the battle zone. A woman who had risen from humble beginnings to lead humanity's expansion into space, she now faced the greatest challenge of her career: what to do with the terrible power they had unleashed. "Madam President," her aide whispered urgently, "preliminary reports indicate complete tactical victory. Estimated coalition losses exceed 90%. Our losses," he paused, "are minimal." The weight of those words settled over the chamber. They had not merely won. They had demonstrated to the galaxy that humanity possessed power beyond imagination. The question now was whether that power would make them protectors or tyrants. Among the drifting debris, a single escape pod transmitted a desperate signal. Ambassador Thane Rex of the Draconian Empire, one of the few surviving high-ranking officials from the Coalition, found himself facing a choice that would define his species' future. His scaled hide bore burns from his ship's destruction, but his mind remained sharp. "This is Ambassador Rex to any human vessels," he transmitted on all frequencies. "I request immediate parley under galactic conventions. The Coalition formally surrenders and seeks terms." On the Crimson Dawn's bridge, Nora felt the weight of history pressing down upon her. The battle was won, but the war for humanity's soul was just beginning. Beside her, Jace monitored the incoming transmissions with troubled eyes. "Captain," Jace reported quietly, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different species. Also, we have incoming priority transmission from Earth." President Cross's image appeared on the main screen, her expression unreadable. "Captain Blackwood, congratulations on your victory. However, we need to discuss the implications of what you've unleashed out there." "Understood, Madam President," Nora replied, requesting permission to conduct preliminary negotiations with the surrendering forces. "Granted. But remember, the entire galaxy is watching our next moves." In the medical bay, Dr. Iris Kane worked frantically to treat the few wounded from their own ship, while also preparing to receive alien survivors. Despite everything that had happened, her oath as a healer compelled her to save any life she could, regardless of species. Commander Blake Torres arrived from Fleet Command aboard the fast courier ship UES Mercury, tasked with overseeing the aftermath. A diplomatic specialist with military experience, he brought with him the complex task of transforming military victory into lasting peace. "Captain Blackwood," he said upon arriving, "Earth is sending a full diplomatic corps, but we need immediate damage assessment." How many survived? The numbers were staggering and sobering. Of the coalition's 8,000 ships, fewer than 300 remained. Entire species had seen their military power broken in a single engagement. The balance of galactic power had shifted so dramatically that old calculations no longer applied. In the surviving Cathari vessel, Liana, a young healer, worked alongside Quinn to coordinate rescue efforts for other species survivors. The Cathari had withdrawn from the battle early, their pacifist nature saving them from the worst of the destruction. "We must act as intermediaries," Liana urged the ship's council. "Both sides will need someone they trust to help navigate what comes next." "The humans have shown they can destroy us at will," replied Elder Mistral, their skin pulsing with anxious colors. "But will they choose to be conquerors or protectors?" That question echoed across the galaxy as news of the battle spread. In distant councils and alien parliaments, leaders grappled with a new reality. Humanity was no longer a rising power to be contained, but a dominant force that could reshape the galaxy at will. Admiral Tess Valen, her betrayal having contributed to the Coalition's catastrophic defeat, found herself in human custody aboard the Crimson Dawn. Facing court-martial and the collapse of everything she had believed, she sat in her cell contemplating the consequences of her choices. Nora visited her former mentor, standing outside the cell with mixed emotions. "Why, Tess? Why betray everything we built?" "I thought I was saving humanity from itself," Tess replied quietly. "I thought if we were humbled, we'd remember our humanity. Instead, I helped create a monster." "We're not monsters," Nora said firmly. "But we're not the same species that left Earth either." In the weeks that followed, emergency sessions convened across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, previously dismissive of human concerns, now rushed to offer full membership and accommodation. Trade agreements materialized seemingly overnight, and species that had been hostile now competed to become humanity's allies. But in quiet moments, Nora and Jace stood together on the observation deck of the Crimson Dawn, watching reconstruction efforts among the debris field. They had survived, their love had endured, but the weight of what they had done would follow them forever. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Jace asked, his arm around Nora's waist. "I think we did the necessary thing," she replied. "The question now is what we do with the power we've revealed." President Cross addressed the United Earth Assembly in a speech that would be remembered for generations. "Today, humanity stands at a crossroads. We have shown the galaxy our strength. Now we must show them our wisdom. We will not be conquerors, but neither will we be victims. We will be guardians of peace, protectors of those who cannot protect themselves." The Crimson Dawn was recalled to Earth, its terrible weapons secured once more. But the knowledge of what humanity could do spread throughout the galaxy like ripples on a cosmic pond. Some species sought alliance, others retreated into isolation, and still others began developing their own doomsday weapons in response. Ambassador Rex, now serving as the primary alien liaison to Earth, worked tirelessly with Liana and other peacekeepers to establish new protocols for interspecies relations. The old order was dead. A new one had to be built from the ashes. As Nora and Jace planned their wedding, a celebration that would be attended by representatives from dozens of worlds, they knew they were witnessing the dawn of a new age. Humanity had claimed its place among the stars not through conquest, but through a demonstration of power so overwhelming that conquest had become unnecessary. The galaxy would never again underestimate the children of Earth, and perhaps in time, they would learn to trust them as well. The Crimson Dawn's engines ignited one final time, carrying its crew home to a world that had become the unofficial capital of galactic civilization. Behind them, space-based memorials marked the site of the battle, reminding all who passed that sometimes the greatest victory was knowing when not to use the power you possessed. The age of humanity's galactic dominance had begun, but it would be defined not by the fire they could unleash, but by the wisdom they chose to show.